There was a time, not so long ago, when a single flag flew over a quarter of the entire globe. An empire so massive it commanded the oceans, shaped whole continents, and really defined an entire era of our history. This is that story, the story of its incredible rise and its equally dramatic fall.
You've probably heard that old saying, right? The sun never sets on the British Empire? Well, the thing is, it wasn't just some poetic boast. It was literally true. From the shores of Canada to the heart of India, from the deserts of Africa to the islands of the Pacific, at any given moment, somewhere on Earth, the sun was shining on British soil.
And that's the big question, isn't it? An empire on that kind of scale, it doesn't just vanish overnight. So what happened? If the sun was always shining somewhere, how did the night finally fall on what was, for a time, the most powerful empire the world had ever seen? All right, let's get into it.
Our story starts small. I mean, really small. Like any great epic, it has humble beginnings. So let's go all the way back to the start to see how this one little island nation even began its journey to world domination. Believe it or not, back in the 16th century, Britain was, well, just a small island, but with huge ambitions. Just like other European powers at the time, it took to the seas. Its sailors and explorers were heading out, looking for new trade routes, new resources, and new lands. And in doing so, they laid the very first bricks of what was to come. And those first few bricks grew into something staggering. Just look at this number, 25%. At its absolute peak, the British Empire controlled nearly a quarter of the world's land. I mean, just try to wrap your head around that scale of power.
So how did they pull it off? Well, it didn't happen overnight. It was a gradual build. The 16th century, that was all about exploration. But then in the 17th and 18th centuries, things shifted. Britain went from being just traders to becoming rulers, setting up firm control in places like America and India. And this all led up to the 19th century. That was the absolute, undisputed peak of its power. Now, a huge part of this expansion was driven by something pretty unique, the East India Company. And listen, this was not just another business. This was a private company that acted like its own country. It could raise its own army, it could govern huge territories, and it was a key tool for establishing British rule, especially in India. Okay, so now we've reached the top of the mountain, the absolute high noon of the empire, a time when its power felt like it would last forever. And it was all supercharged by one world-changing event. The Industrial Revolution. It's hard to overstate this. It didn't just change Britain. It changed the entire world, and it put Britain squarely in the driver's seat. Almost overnight, this little island became the most technologically advanced and powerful nation on the planet, the first true global superpower. You see, this revolution gave the empire an engine that was just unstoppable. Britain had modern technology nobody else could touch. Its Royal Navy completely dominated the oceans, which meant it could protect this massive global trade network. And all of that, it fueled a booming economy, the strongest in the world. And right at the heart of this global web was London. It wasn't just a capital city anymore. It was the financial, political, and cultural hub of the entire planet. The confidence was total. It really must have felt like that high noon was going to last forever. But every long day has an afternoon, right? And for the British Empire, the afternoon brought the first shadows, the first signs that this enormous structure wasn't quite as unbreakable as everyone thought. The cracks were starting to show. So what was the cause? Well, it was conflict on a scale that nobody had ever seen before. The First World War, and then the Second. These were brutal, devastating global wars that basically bled the empire dry. The irony is, they were fought to preserve the empire, but in the end, they were the very things that sealed its doom.
And the cost? I mean, it was catastrophic. Just look at the difference. Before the wars, Britain was a superpower with an economy and military that nobody could challenge. After the wars, it was a nation drowning in debt. Its economy was in pieces, and it was mourning millions of lost lives. The strength, and honestly, the will to rule a global empire was broken.
A weakened giant is always a vulnerable one. And now, with the empire shaken, the final act begins. The sun starts to dip below the horizon, and the dominoes, they start to fall, one after another, with a momentum that no one could stop.
You know, the biggest challenge didn't come from another empire trying to take over. It came from the inside. All across the colonies, from Delhi to Accra, a powerful new idea was spreading like wildfire. The call for freedom, the demand for self-rule. The first and most important domino was India.
in 1947. Losing the jewel in the crown was a huge blow, and it sent a shockwave around the world. It showed everyone that independence was possible, and soon, this massive wave of movements swept across Africa and Asia. Britain, weakened by war, just couldn't hold on anymore. By the 1960s, the world map looked completely different. The empire was, for all intents and purposes, gone.
So, the sun has set. The empire is now a memory, a chapter in the history books. But you know how it is after the sun goes down, right? There is that twilight, that period where the light still lingers, casting these long shadows over the world that was left behind.
Because even though the formal British Empire is over, its influence didn't just flick off like a light switch. The world we're all living in today was fundamentally shaped by it, and its impact is still deeply woven into our societies.
Just think about it for a second. The English language, right? It became the language of global business, science, and culture. The legal and political systems in dozens of countries, many of them modeled on the British Parliament. Even cultural norms and the way the world is connected, so much of that can be traced back to this imperial past. It's a complicated legacy for sure, and a controversial one, but it is undeniably still with us. Which kind of leaves us with one final big question to think about. The physical empire might be history. The flags have been lowered, the armies have gone home, but when something has shaped the world so completely, does its shadow, its influence, its legacy, can that ever truly fade away?